My name is Pensulo, and I'm a freelance journalist for SciDev.net. I was one of the journalists who won the 2021 Kavli Media Award.
And I'm Fiona Broom. I'm the deputy editor at SciDev.net. I came across SciDev.net when I was working as a freelance reporter in Nepal after the earthquakes in around 2015. I was doing some research for another story that I was working on. I was at the time considering moving more towards environmental and science reporting. So I came across some articles on SciDev.net, which just really filled in the story for me. And I actually freelanced at the time. And then I moved towards research in academia for a few years when I worked at an environment and conflicts research organization in India for a little while. I went and did a master's degree in environmental management, and then I found my way back to SciDev.net and to the deputy editor. So I'm now the deputy editor for features and for the Science Focus podcast.
So my path into journalism, I started my career at a research organization where I was an intern. So I was in the communication department, and one of my roles was to write stories out of the research studies that were being conducted. So I was quite exposed to the science stuff, and when I started freelancing, that became I became passionate to report on science as well. So when I got the opportunity to contribute to Africa Science Focus by SciDev, I think it was a great opportunity to be able to cover science stories from in my country, but also the region.
In my acceptance speech for this award, I mentioned that scientists and journalists from the Global South have largely been overlooked in reporting during the pandemic. It's not just an issue that's unique to COVID reporting, it's a wider issue across science and the media. From the science perspective, we hear from a lot of scientists in the Global South that they're often brought in as tokens on research projects, that the direction of research is dictated by researchers from the Global North. And particularly at the beginning of the pandemic, I was speaking with a lot of scientists who were saying, we live in the Global South, we live with infectious diseases. Our careers have been built on researching infectious diseases, but we're not being invited into the field of research on COVID-19 treatments, diagnostics, and vaccines. From the media side, there needs to be recognition that there is expertise in the Global South and that you should be pushing to speak to somebody who has a different perspective.
So in regard to the Omicron variant, here in the Global South, especially in Malawi, where I stay, I think we are not seeing a lot of coverage of the strain. Even though it's highly infectious, but probably because its symptoms are not as grave as the other variants that we had before, we are seeing a little bit of a relaxed atmosphere from the media. So like here, I haven't seen a lot of coverage in as far as the Omicron is concerned. It's almost like life is normal. Yeah. So for journalists like myself in the Global South, we are doing our best to cover the Omicron variant, but I think the attention that was given before is not the same kind of attention that we have right now. So it's like almost the world has moved on, but yet we do know that we were just hearing that numbers have been rising in South Africa, which is something of concern as well. But really, we've just seen maybe this week that there's a little bit of coverage in the international media, but not on the local ground. I haven't seen much coverage.
When we were strategizing how to take on some of this misinformation that we were hearing from journalists like Charles, telling us that that messages were coming through on WhatsApp that were being shared really widely. In some ways, it's easier to combat because you can see immediately that it's not based in science or the science is wrong. And therefore, you can go straight to somebody who works in that field and ask them to explain why the science is wrong. But in some ways, it's more difficult because there's already a clear level of misunderstanding. So you then need to find a way to take the science and turn it into something that can be easily understood and easily shared so that it can combat some of that misinformation.
So I think WhatsApp messaging is quite a very popular platform in countries like Malawi and in other African countries as well. So people do share like messages, videos, and things like that. So during the pandemic, what we saw was that people were sharing a lot of videos that were, talking about the source of this pandemic, and then they were saying that maybe the virus had been created by other people to wipe out Black people, things like that. There was just so much information that was going around. And then if you check those messages, I think it was apparent that they were coming from unverified sources, and there was no really science to back those messages up. So I think as journalists, that's where we came in to actually report and actually to bring out the science to debunk some of these theories that were being shared online.
So some of the sources that we went to combat this disinformation that Charles was just talking about, we tried to come at it from a bunch of different angles in the mini-series that we put together. So we went to speak directly with the people who conducted the clinical trials in South Africa, so we could find out what's actually in a vaccine. And then we spoke to other sources, like there's a fantastic organization called Africa Check, who work really hard to do fact checking in a range of fields. And so we spoke with them about some of their techniques for connecting with people and making sure that it's not just combating incorrect information, but sharing correct information. And then we spoke with a range of health organizations and other scientists and other people who are out there disseminating information on a daily basis.